Welcome back to Ravenous Babble. My name is Dan, and today I'll be babbling on about the Living Legend system and the Living Legend format. First off, let's explain the Living Legend system for those who may not be familiar with it. In Flesh and Blood, there are two main formats that use this system, the Classic Constructed format and the Blitz format. Each of these formats has a different hero roster, as well as a different point total that those heroes need to reach to become a living legend. Now, what does that mean? A living legend hero is a hero that is essentially retired. The way the system works, in high level events, starting with something as small as a skirmish, but also including Road to Nationals, ProQuest, PTI tournaments, National Championships, Battle Hardens, Callings, Pro Tours, and the World Championship. They all award points to the winning hero of said tournament. And those points vary based on the difficulty and importance of the tournament, along with the frequency of the tournament. How often you're going to see tournaments of that level, or how many of those events are going to occur in a season when it comes to something like Road to Nationals or a skirmish. Points range from 4 points for a skirmish or a Road to Nationals or a ProQuest, all the way up to 300 points for the World Championship. Now, as far as point totals, for Classic Constructed, a hero needs to obtain 1,000 points to become a living legend, and for the Blitz format, they need 500 points. Now, in addition to the hero going away and essentially being retired, they also have what's called a signature weapon. Not every hero has this, but most of them do. And the way this works is the weapon is bonded to the hero, so when that hero hits Living Legend, the weapon goes with it. A very good and impactful example of this is Briar, Warden of Thorns, and her bonded weapon, Rosetta Thorn. When she went away and became a Living Legend, Rosetta Thorn went with her, and had a very large impact when it came to rune blades such as Viscerai. This is a sort of self-sustaining ban list, if you will, but it keeps the meta fresh. As new heroes come in, powerful heroes that have risen to the top of the meta will see themselves out, essentially. And the points that heroes accrue toward this living legend status has increased overall in recent months, and that's to accommodate for the future, for 2024, and the fact that we're going to be getting 15 plus heroes from what we've heard. So in addition to an increase in points, we've also seen a higher frequency of checks. Until recently, the Living Legend status would be checked at the same time that a banned and suspended announcement would happen, which is usually a frequency of every few months. This does lead to some feel-bads in the sense that a hero could stick around for multiple months even after hitting 1,000 Living Legend points. And if that hero is dominant and a problem, it can cause a bit of an uproar in the community. And we saw that recently with Lexi Livewire in the Classic Constructed format. Lexi had 1,000 points, and people had had enough of her, but we knew the date that she was going away, and we still had to deal with her in multiple tournaments leading up to that. And it sucks in two ways. One, you have to deal with that, right? The meta might be stale. You might just be tired of playing against Lexi. People might be tired of watching Lexi on stream. A lot of people tune in for streams on the weekends. I'm one of them. But the other thing is that it actually kind of hurts the system, because if that hero is very prominent and continues to accrue points, they essentially become a sponge for Living Legend points and essentially disrupt how that system is supposed to work. You know, if Lexi hits 1,000 points and then keeps on going and hits like 1,300 or something, she's wasted 300 points. Now, given that didn't happen, but it was pretty damn close, because Lexi ended at 1,276 points. That's 276 points that could have gone to multiple heroes. So, as of the last Living Legend check, they announced that they would be doing a Living Legend check every Monday, and if there is a hero that is ascending to Living Legend, that would take effect on the following Friday, giving you almost a week to play that hero after the announcement. But considering events are generally on the weekends, You usually have a day or two advance notice if you're keeping up with the tournament scene. Maybe not so much when it comes to ProQuests or Skirmish, because those points have to get tallied up, but when it comes to like callings and battle hardens, worlds, etc., it's a lot easier to get that information sooner rather than Monday morning. Now, who has ascended recently? Quite a few heroes. Up until the last month or so, it hadn't really been common for a hero to get announced as a living legend. It was a monumentous occasion, mostly because we'd wait for that date and it would finally come, or it took a while for them to accrue points, you know, whatever it is, whatever the situation is. But the fact that they've increased points and they've increased the frequency of the checks has made it seem like a lot, I think, in the last month. And there's probably some people that are taken aback by it. I think it's fine. But we have lost 5 heroes overall in the last month or so. We lost Lexi in the Classic Constructed format, Chain in the Blitz format, who is also gone in Classic Constructed, Icelander in the Classic Constructed format, who has also gone in the Blitz format, Kano in the Blitz format, and Kasai in the Blitz format. Now, in terms of relevance to their weapons, their signature weapons, Kasai does stand out because she notably does use Centauri Sabers, and they are getting reprinted as a token weapon in heavy hitters. So what does that mean for Kasai in Blitz when we get her new hero? Well, we don't know yet. We'll find out when the time comes. I'm sure there will be more weapons in heavy hitters. Maybe they're not super effective for her, but maybe she has to use an older warrior weapon for now. Maybe she's going to have to wait for the weapon that she really wants, you know? People just won't be able to go the route that they were expecting that they would go. It's time to be a little innovative. But that aside, what are some changes I'd like to see to the Living Legends system? Like I said, if a hero sticks around too long, it causes an uproar in the community. Usually it's a loud minority, but I do want to voice my opinion on what I think I would like to see as far as the Living Legend system. And I think I would like to see something like a 2-week notice, meaning we can still do the Living Legend checks on Monday, but instead of that Friday, maybe the following Friday would be better. This gives the hero a full 2 weeks past the announcement to be played. And I feel like that's good. It's a small time frame. We're not waiting, we're not, say, checking at the beginning of every month or something, and then a hero skirts by the check just by 1 or 2 days, and then we have to deal with it until next month. No, this is a very specific thing. A hero will essentially have an expiration date set on that Monday. They can't escape it by going to the following month or anything like that. And this gives players a time to transition as well. Not every player is going to have a backup deck, and maybe that player likes to go to weekly armories, so this gives them time to trade, maybe to buy some cards online and give those cards time to ship and be delivered, and maybe they don't need to miss as many armories because of that. So moving forward, I would like to see something like that, like a 2 weeks notice on a hero when it comes to Living Legend announcements, but I'm not all in a tizzy about it. It's fine as it is right now for me, but that's for me. I will mention that a local friend of mine, Brian, who has been playing Icelander for a while, he needs to play a new hero now, and I believe he does have backup decks, so he'll be fine. But it sucks for him because he's only able to go to 1 armory a week, and that armory this week, while we're waiting for Icelander to become Living Legend, is actually a skirmish. We're not doing a Classic Constructed armory this week because the skirmish event is taking its place. And I don't know if that's normal for all LGSs or some LGSs to do, but because of that, if that is a normal thing, he isn't going to get a chance to play Icelander in another Classic Constructed armory. The announcement was made on Monday, and it might as well have said that Icelander was banned that day. And that sucks. But again, if we had something like a 2-week time frame, he'd be able to play her, even if it's only once. A nice little farewell to a hero that he's put so much time into. And honestly, as of right now, I think that's the only change I'd like to see to the Living Legend system itself. So let's talk about the Living Legend format. What happens to all these heroes when they attain Living Legend? Well, you can't play them in their formats, right? So what do you do with them? At least for the Classic Constructed format, all of those heroes are legal in the Living Legend format. which just had its first tournament at the Worlds 2023 weekend in Barcelona in the form of a Battle Hardened on that Sunday. The way the format is sculpted right now is you can play any hero and all cards are legal, which presents a few issues. We'll get into that. But that's for classic constructed heroes. So what becomes of Blitz heroes? Well, I don't know if there are plans to do a Blitz Living Legend format. I haven't seen people really ask that. I don't know if it's been spoken to. But in my mind, the young heroes have numerous places that they can go. Some of them can be played in the commoner format. All of them can be played in the UPF format. If you play Clash, most of them can be played there, if not all of them. There are places to use the young heroes, but there aren't other places to use the adult heroes. So the necessity of the Living Legend format, I think, mostly applies to Classic Constructed and the adult heroes. So as of right now, not sure what's going to happen with Blitz heroes that have hit Living Legend outside of just being retired for that format and being usable in more casual formats. So we'll focus on Classic Constructed Living Legend. But yeah, no holds barred. To no one's surprise, the Battle Hardened top 8 for the Living Legend event at Barcelona this year was all Starvo. All Bravo star of the show, who is notorious for being the hero to hit Living Legend the quickest and was known as one of the most powerful heroes ever created for a few reasons. With no cards being banned and him having access to things like Awakening, it didn't really help matters much. Honestly, if Awakening was banned, I feel like it very easily still could have ended up as a Starvo top 8, but I digress. That is something unfortunate about the Living Legend system in that if you really like a hero, let's say Viserai, right? I was a big Viserai stan for a while. Still like him. He's just not in a great spot in the metagame right now, so I'm taking a back seat for a hot minute. Let's say Viserai hits Living Legend. That doesn't mean that he's going to be competitively viable in the Living Legend format, and that's a little unfortunate, because you might say, well, I really liked Viserai and now I can't play him in CC, but oh, I can play him in Living Legend. And then you go to play him in Living Legend and you get demolished because maybe he's just outranked in that format. With everything being legal, what are you going to do? You know? But I think there are some solutions that can be explored for this. Now, will it make it perfect? Absolutely not. But what I would like to see is one of two things. And we'll go in the order that I'd like to see it. The first thing is restrictions. Restrictions on cards like Awakening. You can only run one in a deck. I don't think we need to go as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they limit to like 2 or 1. Just call it restricted. It's limit 1 per deck. Let's not beat around the bush. It doesn't need to be that specific. If they want to, go nuts. But the problematic cards here are going to be the ones that are limited to 1. Now, why limit to 1? Why not just outright ban? Well, for me, and this is all personal, I think the philosophy should be that everything is legal in some fashion. If it's a one of, and your complaint is that's too much variance, it's Living Legend, my guy. This isn't meant to be the competitive format. That's Classic Constructed. This is a place where we go to play our adult heroes that we can't play anymore, or to play cards that we can't play anymore. And that last part there is the bit I'm focusing on. I want to play Awakening. Okay, you can play one of them. Sounds great to me. So restrictions, I think, would work. And restrictions don't even need to really mirror what we have in the Classic Constructed format. The best example I could think of is with Bloodsheath Scaletta being legal in Living Legend, you have the Bloodsheath Scaletta and Sonata Arcanix combo that was very powerful in Classic Constructed when Sonata Arcanix was around. You could, instead of banning Bloodsheath Scaletta, restrict Sonata Arcanix to 1. Now again, similar to an Awakening at 1, it's going to be a high roll. It's going to add variance. You know, oh, I didn't draw my Scalata combo. Well, it's going to make you rethink the deck build, and maybe if you draw into it, sweet, you drew into the nuts. But that concept really reminds me of Magic the Gathering, where a very notable card, we'll use the example of Brainstorm. Brainstorm is not banned in the Legacy format, where there are numerous bans. But in the vintage format, which goes one step further, effectively the living legend format, where every card is legal, and there are some exceptions. There are specifically 2 or maybe 3 kind of exceptions, but those go beyond the strength of a card. They're more mechanical. There are betting cards like the anti-mechanic where you actually bet things, the dexterity style mechanics where you flip cards. They can really disrupt how a game is actually played, so those cards are historically banned from the vintage format. But a card like Brainstorm is actually restricted to 1 in the vintage format because of the relative power level of the format as a whole. You have a high power level format where Brainstorm is restricted to 1, and then you have a slightly lower power level format where you can run as many Brainstorms as you want. It's all context. So in that sense, you can have your Bloodshea Scaletta and you can have your Sonata Arcanix at 1, because that combo is deadly. That's something I'd like to see. If that doesn't work, the other thing I would like to see explored, and this is heavily debated anytime I bring it up, people say it's too complicated, this, that, and the other. I would like to see hero-centric bans, meaning Awakening is banned for Starvo, but you'd still be able to play it in Oldhim, because Oldhim is also an Elemental Guardian. The point of that is that every card is legal in some capacity, but maybe not for the hero you want it to be, for balance purposes. This way all cards are technically still legal. Now people say it's too much to keep track of. What do you do when you build a deck? Do you have the whole ban list memorized? You probably do, right? Because at some point or another, probably more than once, you've gone online to the Flesh and Blood website and looked up the ban list for whatever format you're building a deck for. It'd be the same thing. And if you play often enough, you'll know which cards aren't allowed and which heroes. It's simple. And honestly, it's more notable. If, say, Stubby Hammerers was banned in Fi, or Belittle was banned in Fi, you'd know that, because that card sticks out in that hero. We all know what happened when Stubby Hammerers was legal. Fi was really damn good. But I counter the argument of it's too complicated with, why don't you try it out? Maybe experience it first before you pop off and say, it's too much. I can't remember that. What if I build a deck and I don't know? If you're building a deck, you're going to see which cards are banned before you build it, I would hope. Do you just show up at tournaments with cards that are banned because you haven't checked? No. So that whole argument, don't care. If you're not willing to give it a shot, I don't know if I want to hear whatever solutions you would have for banning or restricting or anything in a format, because you're not open-minded, and we'll leave it at that. All in all, we need to remember that the Living Legends system itself is fluid. LSS will continue to change it and reshape it and mold it as the game grows, because Flesh and Blood is still a fairly young game. And as we come into our own, these systems are going to become more and more solidified. And in the same sense, the Living Legend format is completely new. We've had one tournament, and I don't think anyone is surprised again that Starvo was the entire top 8, but that being said, I trust in LSS to handle that format in a very precise fashion, just like they do with Classic Constructed. Now, what'll they do? I don't know. Time will tell. I'd like to see them incorporate some of the ideas that I've thrown out here. Not necessarily inspired by me, but I'd like to think that maybe they thought of something like this. But at the same time, they're very innovative. So I'm willing to try whatever they have as a solution. My thing is, I would like to see that all the cards are playable in some sense in the Living Legend format, and that's just my personal philosophy on how it should be navigated. But yeah, that's all I have to say for today. What do you think about the Living Legend system or the Living Legend format? Do you think that heroes are accruing points too quickly? Do you think that Starvo needs to get banned out of Living Legend? Tell me what you think down below in the comments. And until next time, remember, stay safe, keep playing great games, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya. Shout out to the Ravenous Babble patrons who keep the channel going. If you would like to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/RavenousBabble and see which tier is best suited for you.